Good afternoon and welcome to NYFP. Many of you may be familiar with the Barron's 400 Index. Last week, the index became investable as an ETF. Joining me to talk more about that ETF as well as the Barron's 400 Index is John Morgan of MarketGrader Capital. John, good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining me.
Hi, my pleasure.
Well, first and foremost, many of the viewers in our audience may be familiar with the Barron's 400 Index. So could you tell me a little bit about it and give me a little bit of background?
I'll be happy to. The Barron's 400 Index is a kind of a stock pickers index, and the mantra for it is growth at a reasonable price. So what we do is we take, say, a universe of about 6,000 U.S. stocks. We screen them for about 24 different indicators, and what we end up with is that growth at a reasonable price. We look at fundamentals, growth, value, cash flow, profitability, and then we add some other factors in there related around price and earnings and book value, and the goal is to kind of winnow out not just the companies that are not good value, but the companies that are overpriced. So you should have some confidence with the Barron's 400 that you don't have to get a hanky out because you're not going to get a nosebleed from high valuations.
And speaking of getting the hanky out, we've been seeing a lot of volatility around the globe, but given that the ETF of the Barron's 400 Index was launched, in a nutshell, can you give me an overview of this ETF that's listed on the Arca?
I can. The ticker is BFOR. It was actually launched by ALPS ETF Trust. Not by us. We're the calculators of the index, but the basic tenet of BFOR is that it seeks to correspond to the underlying index itself. So it seeks the corresponding returns like the index does, and the index year to date is up about 17.7% coming into this week versus about 16% for the Dow, 15 for the S&P, and about I think 14 for the NASDAQ. So it's outperforming, and it has over both the long-term, medium-term, short-term, long-term cumulative return over 5 years is about 38.6%, which is far higher than other major indexes, and the cumulative 10-year is 166%. Again, very high. So it kind of lets you think that you can hold it both in that you can rely on the index both in good times and bad.
And John, taking a closer look at the BFOR ETF, it's always a good idea to get an idea of other rival funds out there. So can you tell me a little bit about comparable funds?
Well, I did notice that Zacks just had a story, and they compared BFOR to a couple of large cap fundamental ETFs that I think were out by maybe by ProShares. I think it was ProShares, and I think the distinction is that those are large cap growth fundamental ETFs, whereas this one is about 25% growth. I mean, 25% large cap, 25% mid cap, and 50% small cap is the. So there's really not an index fund that we know of that's like the Barron's 400 Index ETF.
And John, when you take a look at the name for the Barron's 400 Index or even the ETF, which is the Barron's 400 Index ETF, you notice the name Barron's. And so I heard that Barron's collects a fee for this usage of its name. Now, is that true?
Yeah. Yes. The Barron's 400 Index is actually a partnership between MarketGrader, which is a stock research firm, and Barron's. And the methodology was put together kind of in consultation with the two, Barron's editors and MarketGrader. And in fact, you know, they do gain some revenue from the ETF. We actually maintain it, we set it, we pick the components, but it's really based on some of their traditional methodology. If you're acquainted with Barron, you know what a great financial magazine it is, and how they really rely on analysis of fundamental attributes of companies. So we're proud to be in partnership with them.
And John, in your position, I'm sure you come across a lot of trends as well as forecasts, and investors are always seeking great returns when it comes to investments, and none of us have a crystal ball. But are there any trends that you're paying attention to right now?
Well, right now, the Barron's 400 index, it's rebalanced twice a year, so components come in, components go out. Right now, it's kind of weighted towards consumer discretionary, industrials, and technology, and it's underweight materials, telecom, and utilities. And you know, if you wanted to, you could look at when the components change, which was March and September, and try to figure out which of the sectors we're emphasizing, and then try to deconstruct it. But honestly, I don't know why you'd want to, because we do it already, and it's the Barron's 400 index.
Well, John, thank you so much for joining me on this Monday afternoon, and thank you so much for a better idea of the ETF.